Well, I just want to make a little statement here first, because we're assuming all the listeners know the difference between a type 1 and a type 2. So in Alanna's case, her body's not making insulin anymore, right? It does very little. And a lot of times we don't know exactly why. It could be genetic, it could be inflammation of some sort, but it's very different than type 2, even though there are similarities. So can you kind of give us some differences? Because I think sometimes we need to separate those, because people want to lump them together and they're really different.
They are really different. So it is a theory, and a very good one from all of the type 1s that I've also talked to, is that there is a stressor on the body that happens to make somebody a type 1 diabetic. For me, I had strep throat 11 times. And after that, my body was like, okay, we're going to attack itself.
Right.
And for type 2 diabetics, it's more insulin resistance than not making insulin. So instead of the body being able to utilize the insulin that it has, it doesn't know what to do with it. So it just doesn't use it the way that it should. It doesn't accept the amount that it's being given. And the major difference is that just getting more exercise really helps insulin resistance. Right. And moving your body. A lot of people end up doing low carb for that reason. I've done low carb, and it really doesn't make that much of a difference to me. Honestly, I didn't like low carb because I didn't have as much energy. And I just didn't ever feel fully satisfied with what I was doing. It did make my blood sugars like easier to control. But yeah, type 2s definitely have it a little rougher, in the sense that they really got to work hard to.
Well, although
their body.
I see what you're saying. I would argue that I think type 1s have it harder, because your disease, Alanna, is not reversible.
Right.
You're not going to magically
It's not
start
reversible.
Right.
But I'm not going to have nearly as many complications as somebody.
But the good news is with type 2 diabetics is they can reverse it. And one of the ways to reverse type 2 diabetes is just don't eat carbohydrates. Because it's totally different with insulin levels. One has high insulin, one has no insulin. And really, but they both have high glucose. And one of the ways to lower your glucose, if you're type 2 diabetic, is just don't eat carbs. I think that would be better than having to inject insulin all day long and having to monitor your glucose. If you just change your diet and you say exercise, they can reverse their type 2 diabetes.
Correct. But we still have the same issue in the sense that our livers still do their job and give us that extra sugar spike.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
So, there's definitely a lot of similarities. I've always felt like, yes, the type 1 diabetic seems to have it more rough, but the complications that come along with a type 2 diabetic are so much greater if you don't take care of it. I mean, they're pretty significant for us too.
Yeah, right.
As a person that takes care of herself, I know I'm not going to lose my foot because.
Right.
But you're forced to. You're forced to really early because you can't produce the insulin. So your consequences were felt very suddenly and early on. Where I feel like a type 2, it's a very gradual thing over their life. By the time they're diagnosed, their activity and their habits have already formed, and that problem wasn't diagnosed for a very long time. So you were forced into that corner and you had to address it much earlier. So the damage, I think, can be, on a different scale. But certainly I agree with you. There's similarities on how you have to approach and the outcomes of the consequences, blindness, losing limbs, things like that, are still there because it's too much sugar floating in the body.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, that's the main thing they have in common is that they have too much sugar floating in the body, but how it manifests itself is different.
Right.
Right.